Alright, notice number 6. Finding the zeros, the maximum using the graphing calculator. So we can determine our solutions to quadratic equation by graphing them, finding the x-intercepts or the zeros, and we can also find the minimum and the maximum values. Now, to do these, we have about 8 steps or so. So the first step, it says make sure the equation is in our y equals or f of x equals form. So when we look at the first one, it already says y equals, so it's y equals 3x squared plus 6x plus 8. So it's good to graph. So it says y equals, so we come to our calculator, we type in y equals. So we have 3x squared plus 6x plus 8. So we have our first equation in there, and then we can graph it. Now, when we look at graphing it, we want to make sure that we can see where this graph turns, so we can find the vertex. So with this graph, we notice that it has a vertex right here. So we have our vertex. So once we have our vertex, we don't have to change the view of it. So we can see this vertex. And we also notice that this graph is going up. So what happens is it's not going to cross the x-intercept. So we're not going to have any x-intercepts here. So when we look at our zeros, well, this graph never crosses the x-intercept, so we have no zeros. So there's no zeros, or there's no solutions. But we can find the minimum and the maximum value. So to do that, we want to go down to step 4, where it says second trace. So we hit the second button, and then the trace. So now we have second trace, and we can see our hit second trace too. So second trace, and okay, this time we want to find the minimum value. Our graph had a minimum, so we're going to go to number 3 and hit enter. It's a minimum value. Now it says left bound and right bound. Well, what we want to think about with the left bound and the right bound is that the left bound and the right bound is that we have our axis of symmetry that divides this in half. So what we need is we need this cursor to be on the left side of that imaginary line and the cursor to be on the right side of that imaginary line. So we have our line, which is right there, and now the cursor is on the left side. So it's somewhere on this side. So once it's on the left side of that, we hit enter for our left bound, and now we can try to find the right bound. So to find the right bound, we need to go onto this side. So we can move our cursor over so that we are on the right side of it. So now we're on the right side, so now we're on the right bound, and we can hit enter, and it says guess. We hit enter, and it's going to give us a minimum value of -1, 5. So we know that our minimum, the minimum is -1, 5. If we look at example 2, it says y equals 5x squared. So it's already in the form y equals, so we go 5x squared plus 2x minus 3 plus 2x minus 3. So we can graph this. Now, once again, we have our graph here. So if we look at it, we can see the vertex is right here, and we can also see that we have two zeros. We have two x-intercepts, so we can calculate all this. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to we got it, we graphed it, we don't have to adjust it because we can see everything, so we do second trace. Second trace, we want to find the 0, so we go to 0, we hit enter, and now it says left bound. Well, I want to move my cursor to the left. So now my cursor is all the way at the top left, and once again I want to be on the left side of this, so if I draw my line that divides it in half, which is going to be right around here. I want to be on the, actually, we're talking about the zeros, so this is the 0, so I want to be on the left side. I want to be over here somewhere. So we're going to move our cursor to that side. So, and this is positive. We hit enter. And then at right bound, we want to go on to the other side. So now I'm crossed over my x-axis. You can notice that this is now negative. We hit enter. Guess, we hit enter. And it gives us a 0 of -1 and 0. So we'll notice the y value is 0. The x is -1. So now we can go and say that 1, 0, x equals -1. We can do this for the second 0. If you notice there's 2 zeros, 1 and 2. So we go second, trace, we want the 0. So now we want the left bound. Well, we're talking about the second 0, so we're going over to the second 0. We want to be on the left side of it. So we're on the left side. This time the y value is negative because we're below it, so we hit enter. The right bound, we cross over the x-axis. Notice it went from negative to positive. We hit enter. Guess, we hit enter. We get our second 0 of 0.6. So 0.6. If you get an error statement where it says no sign change, the y value was either negative and negative or positive and positive. And then we can determine that, well, this has a minimum value. So since it's a minimum, we want to do second, trace, second, trace, and we want to find the minimum value. And now our minimum, we want to be on the left side, so we have to move the cursor to the left side because it says left bound. So now my cursor's on the left side, so we hit enter. And then we scroll over to the right side, so we're right bound, and we hit enter. Guess, we hit enter. And it gives us this minimum of -0.200006 and -3.2. So we're going to say that our minimum is -0.2, -3.2. So the minimum is -0.2, -3.2. And if we look at example 3, you might get something that would have been like -0.199999, which also is going to round to -0.2. So if we go to y equals, we type in the third example, -4.9x squared plus 30x plus 5. Graph. Now with this one, what we notice is that we see the line come up and we see the line come back down, but we don't see the top of the graph. So we have to change the y. So what we do is we go to the window, so we hit the window key, and we need the graph to go up higher. So we might not know how high it needs to go, but we just, the max, let's say we want to change it to 40. And count by 4s. And now if we hit our graph, well, the graph goes up, but we didn't go up high enough, so we have to change it again. So I might go back to the window, and since 40 wasn't high enough, maybe I'm going to say 80. And count by 8s. Not 8, I want 80. And graph. So now we can see the whole graph. We could have did 60 or 70, just as long as we see this whole graph. Now we can find the zeros. So to find the zeros, we do second, trace, and we want 0, which is number 2. Now left bound, so my cursor is here. So notice my y value is negative, so I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to cross over, and now the y value is positive, so I hit enter. Guess, hit enter. My per 0, when y is equal to 0, x is -0.16. So we have x equal -0.16. Now to find the second 0, we just do the same process. So second, trace, number 2. Alright, but we're going to go all the way around my graph. And now notice the y value is getting up, but it's coming back down, looking at the y value, which is right here. It's going down, it's going down, it's getting closer to 0. Well, we don't want to go over 0, so it's positive, so I'm going to hit enter. And now I want to cross over, and if you notice the y value went from positive to negative. And once we do that, now we're at right bound. We hit enter, and we get a 0 of 6.28, so I'm going to say that's 6.3. So we have our two zeros, negative 0.16 and 6.3. And then this has a maximum value, so maximum is second calc. Number 4, maximum. Now, once again, we want to be on the left of this. Well, this is the middle, the left side is over here. So we're going to move our cursor over to the left side. So now I'm somewhere on the left side. So you hit enter. We move the cursor over to the right side. Notice my graph is now on the right side of it. Here's the top, it's on the right side. I hit enter for right bound. Guess, I hit enter. It gives me our maximum of 3.06 and 50.9. So 3.06, 50.9. Now, the last example, so I go to y equals. We have negative 4.9 plus 33x plus 2. So 33x plus 2. So we type in our graph. Now, if we do this zoom 6, it's going to give us our standard window. So once again, our graph, we can see both of these, so we don't have to change the x, but the y. So if we want to change the y, we go to window. Now we want to make the y value go higher. So I might say I want to go all the way up to 100. So I type in 100. If I go to 100, I'm going to count by tens. And I hit graph. So now we see our graph, it comes up and it comes back down. So we see the top of our graph, we see where it turns, so we can find our solutions. We can find our zeros. So we do second trace, we want 0, and we see our cursor right here. We want the y value to be in the negatives, so we hit enter, that's left bound. Now we cross over, my y value is positive, we hit enter, enter, and we have a 0 of negative 0.06, so x equals negative 0.06. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other side, so second trace, we want our 0, and now as we're going along, we notice that the y value is going up, and now it's starting to come back down. So we get close to 0, but we want it to stay positive. So I'm going to hit enter, cross over into the negatives. Now my y value is negative, I hit enter. Guess, we hit enter. And we get 6.79, so I'm going to say that's 6.8. To find the maximum and the minimum, we can do second trace, maximum. We want left bound, so I'm going to move my cursor to the left side of my maximum. I went a little too far. So I'm on the left side. Here's the maximum. I'm on the left side. I hit enter. Now I want to go to the right side, so I scroll over to the right. We hit enter. And enter for guess, and we get the maximum of 3.36 and 57.56. So we're going to say 3.4. 3.4 and 57.6. Now that is using the graphing calculator to find the minimum, the maximum, and the zeros. So just remember about how going from left side to right side. If you're getting error statements, you just have to redo it and make sure you cross over those signs. And that's all we have for today.